Welcome to Grain Marketing Update. It's Matt Bennett, grain marketing consultant with Beck's. We're going to try this again here this week, see what all we can come up with as far as if we can get the slides to work just a little bit better. Just to start, I want to tell you, we started farming there on Thursday, started cutting beans in Central Illinois. Several of you dealing with Beck's have reached out and shared yields with me. Just to give you an update for me, black ground planted in mid-April has been awfully good. We've got to think that some of this better dirt's really going to excel this year compared to some of the others. At least that's what we've seen so far. So as far as I'm concerned, 75 to 83 is the yields we've been running so far. And we've cut about 300 acres of beans, so about a quarter for us. And quite frankly, we'll probably get into some more beans within the next 2 or 3 days. It'll be on a little bit lighter ground. But just from what I'm hearing in the countryside, it's probably going to be one of these deals where yield drag could be, a fair amount. But I've been hearing guys talk anywhere from 10 to 20 bushel below, whenever you change soil types. So I'm going to try to get to where we are sharing. I had an issue last week trying to get this figured out. And so you're going to have to bear with me, but let's see if we can get this to go. Hopefully you'll be able to see this, but essentially, the first thing I'm going to show you here, I want to get to my slide deck here, and I'm having a hard time getting to it. But let me try this again. And so I apologize. I had a heck of a time trying to figure it out last week, but as far as the slide deck's concerned, I'm trying to show you the USDA. I'm just going to talk through it for the time being because I might be able to get this. I think I've got it now. Okay, let me start here. Hopefully you can see this, and I don't know. I can't guarantee that you can. Hopefully I'll get a little bit of feedback on whether you're seeing this or not. But, essentially this is the USDA slide, and basically it's showing you that, supply and demand is essentially, everyone was wanting to look at yield. Okay, so yield, of course, you look at that right up front at 186, two bushel below where we're at a month ago. Obviously, it was a shocker of a report that we had there last month. But essentially what you've got is increased acres again. And so you take acres up once again, and it certainly is one of those deals where it basically keeps everything the same whenever it comes to your ending stocks number. And so it wasn't a friendly report. In fact, it was a little bit of a bearish report. And then you come in here on Friday and you see, the market close up 10 cents. I mean, I had people texting me nonstop. What in the world? Why are we going up? It's not like they were upset about it, but certainly it was one of those deals where, the market certainly had all the reasons to go lower, because the problem is whenever you add acres, they continue to add demand, and so demand goes up 100 million bushels for exports. Our exports have been fantastic. So I want to look at my S&D balance sheet, and so this is probably going to work a little bit better right here. Okay, so with my S&D balance sheet, with the guys that I work with, at the far right is basically their acres and their yield. Okay, it gets us to a carry out of 2298. Why am I doing that? Because I think their feed and residual number is too high. Our whole team thinks it's too high. We've got a lot of cattle not coming north of the border out of Mexico, but we continue to ship corn down there. So if that's the case, could we hit the export number that they've got forecasted for us, which is just a gigantic one? If you look under the 2024, you saw 2650 as far as exports were concerned. Whereas this year, they've bumped them up significantly. If I go down in production, I've got to think that exports could scale back somewhat. The lowest, as far as stocks usage goes, if you get back to a trend line yield of 181, maybe you get down into that 1.8 type time area. But bottom line is, it's probably not going to be a tight situation as far as old crops concerned. But you look at world, I've talked about this every time out. If you've heard me talk the last couple of years, you look at the start of 24-25 at 315 million tons. You come out of 25-26 at 281. And so as far as the world's concerned, we're using more corn than what we're growing. And considering Brazil just harvested a mammoth crop, and the U.S. obviously is looking at a very large crop. I mean, yes, it could come down somewhat. If it comes down, then this gets even tighter. And so this is at a time whenever the grower clearly has some issues whenever it comes to, hey, what are we going to plant for 2026, considering our cost structure? And so, where did all this yield change around? So this is versus the previous year. And I think this is very important for us to know, because some of you guys are saying, hey, my corn's better than a year ago. Some of you guys are saying my corn's worse than a year ago. But Illinois being up at 219, I am a little bit hesitant to believe that's going to be the case. Obviously, seeing Ohio better than what they were a year ago is kind of a train wreck in a lot of places in Ohio last year. But still, the southern half of Ohio's had a rough time this year. And so, are they going to be that much higher? I think you get in the Western Corn Belt, it makes sense to me. Absolutely, you could see this yield go up. But here's where I really start to question things. So you look at, for instance, the objective yield. And so basically what they're saying here is the yield's going to be significantly higher than what the ears per acre historically produce. And so what that would suggest is, of course, you've got massive ear size, excellent kernel depth. I think there's parts of the country that's going to be the case. Is that going to be the case where I'm at, where we've got drought conditions to end the year? I don't know about that. Quite frankly, April planted corn probably going to have held on to more of that weight, I believe, than some of our later planted corn. But a lot of us in this part of the world couldn't plant a lot of our corn in the month of April. And so I do think that this could come into question. Now, you look at the last report, as far as last year. So November, clearly, they still had that yield way above ears per acre. January, they had to scale this thing back significantly. And so bottom line is, we're going to have to see this scale back quite a bit. I mean, you look last year, and essentially ears per acre were the same on the final report. So could you get back to 181 or below? I mean, I think it's a very possible situation. You look at world soybean supply and use, and it's a different story than corn. Again, I've talked about this quite a bit, but I just want you to know we're raising more beans than what we're using in the world. And so it's problematic. It's a totally different situation than what you look at with corn. You look at the U.S. soybean supply and demand, and we'll actually get to, let me go to that one first. And I apologize, I jumbled up my deck. But essentially, a 300 million bushel carryout, it didn't change much at all from last month. But what they do, they added acres of soybeans as well. And so that's clearly, again, it's a bit of a headwind whenever you look at how this thing is going to pan out. I mean, the problem you've got right now, though, is that as I look up here, if you're at 81.1 and you go ahead and you drop the yield back to 50 bushel, you've got to make some changes in the balance sheet. Well, the changes that I made here is I dropped exports back quite a bit. USDA for this month dropped back, just like 20 million bushel. Okay. And so essentially 15-20. And so basically at the far right, that's their balance sheet. And it's a little bit off on the bottom because we've got a few percentages, small like decimal points, if you will, but around a 300 million bushel carryout. But if you go down to 52, of course, 262. If you go down to 50, 201, regardless of how this plays out, what you're most likely looking at is that this is going to be a very tight domestic situation this year. Now, for beans, how they figure, of course, pods per square feet. And as you can see, pod counts were just absolutely phenomenal this year. With pod counts being so robust, obviously it gives you the potential to have a big crop. The problem, of course, is whenever you get into a situation that we've got right now, drought. And so you look at the drought monitor versus just a month ago. Bottom line is a big chunk of the Eastern Corn Belt did not finish well. I mean, that would be putting it mildly. And so, again, my early yields were awfully good. But guys that are cutting beans on lighter ground are finding that it's a totally different situation. Of course, water holding capacity comes into play. I mean, definitely going to see with late season stress, in my opinion, soil types are going to come up huge. Planting date's going to come up huge. And I'm just estimating on my farm, whenever I go from mid-April planted to mid-May and late May planted, that the yield loss, I'm just going to estimate anywhere from 15 to 25 bushel an acre is just what I'm afraid of. I mean, I think we're going to be cutting a lot of beans in this part of the world that we haven't seen those types of yields in several years. And it's just a function of the fact that Mother Nature did not cooperate with us. So sure, we found good pod counts, but one thing that we found even in the black ground, the seed size is just not very big. And that's not hard to fathom that you would get into that situation. So where does this, where are we going to put our focus moving forward? Well, what is China going to do? I mean, that's a big question. So if you look here, Chinese imports are forecast to record 112 million metric ton for 25-26. And that's basically equal to these Brazilian exports. So will China pull down ending stocks in their own country just to prove a point? I mean, that's the big question. So as of right now, our export situation is actually, it's a pretty decent export situation. So, essentially everyone other than China has been buying a fair amount of beans. The problem is China gobbles up the lion's share, of soybeans. And so I'm going to get back to, I'm going to quit sharing here, and we're going to kind of wrap this up here shortly. But essentially, China, if they don't come in and they don't buy soybeans, it puts us in a pretty tough situation. First of all, they've got all their needs met for the month of September. Most of their needs are met for October. And so a lot of you are talking to me about, hey, my basis just freaking stinks. Yeah, of course it stinks, especially whenever you're on the river and we have no export program for the most part for right now. Now you look at my local bids. And so local bids, actually one of the bigger processors in my part of the world, they widen basis 15 to 20 cents for cash beans. Meanwhile, they've been offering over the last few days, if you get out to June, July, an $11 price for soybeans. So the difference between selling your beans at harvest and selling them out to summer time frame on a cash basis, if you will, is pushing $1 a bushel. It's pushing $1 a bushel. I know a lot of you don't like to store soybeans on the farm. I totally get it. Especially if you're in a situation with a newer style bin that's got the program in that you can keep moisture content or put moisture back in the beans. And basically the way that it works is when humidity is high, of course you run fans and you try to put moisture back in the soybeans. I don't have one of these yet. I am going to get one myself, actually, through the I believe my customer rewards this year is going to be a bin program. But I'm going to experiment with that. But I know several of you have told me you've got that available to you. And so, I understand you put 14% beans in the bin, you throw some air on them, but then you take them out 5-6 months later and they're 12, 11%. I get it. It's frustrating. But the carry in the market would suggest that you need to strongly consider some on-farm storage on beans that are not sold. Now, I know several of you have got beans that are hedged in advance. You've got contracts. But after those contracts are full, I'm afraid that we're going to be barking up the wrong tree here, trying to get a cash price for soybeans over the next 6-8 weeks that we really want to take a look at. And so as far as corn goes, my personal opinion here on corn, I mean, we're seeing the corn market up again here today. I think that there's several different things that are going on. There's no doubt that whenever you look at the old crop situation, it is ample. It's not tight. But you have to consider what is 26 going to look like. There's been a lot of talk that you're going to get some sort of government support. I know most of us would care not to ever see any sort of government support. But if it does come, most likely what you're going to see is that it could latch onto a few corn acres still getting planted. Now you've got a 17 million acre gap currently between 25 corn acres and bean acres. that is going to narrow. To what degree, I don't know. I think it'll be somewhat of a function of what does the USDA do? What kind of a program do they roll out here? What kind of cash is the farmer going to have on hand? Looking at fertilizer programs, a lot of us have experienced that if we're going to go into the exact same fertilizer program we did a year ago, it would cost us up to and over $100 an acre, more than what it did for the 25 crop, which is an issue. Considering D's 26, we got up to 469 last Friday. We're pushing up on some of those levels again. That's close to the insurance price from last February. But even at that, you have to assume a monster yield to be able to make this work. So I think for corn moving forward, corn can be pretty darn good property. I just think that your basis levels are going to be tough to stomach, at least for the time being. I think a person's going to have to be patient. And if they want to go ahead and sell corn, I've got no issue with that. Go ahead and sell some corn, and then you turn around, keep some sort of ownership. That's something that the guys and gals that work with me at Ag Market are good at. It keeps us in a situation where we can take advantage. I always talk about having a flexible plan. That's the kind of flexibility I want to see. So the questions that you guys have, make sure you send them to me. Everyone's got my contact info at this point. I sure appreciate everyone listening in today, and stay in touch. Next week we'll come actually from the field, as long as it works well. We're going to try it out, and I probably won't have any slides whenever I come from the field, but I'm going to be sitting in a combine cab. And I'm going to talk to you about what I see going on with the markets, what I see going on in my field, and anything that I can feel that will be valuable to you. But again, thanks for tuning in.